Yeah. Good evening, friends. Welcome to Karnataka ENT Hospital academic programs, that is Kent Academics, which we have been doing for quite some time. I wish you all a happy new year, a joyous new year, and safe and healthy new year. Okay. Uh, Stay yourself safe. Yes, sir, Dr. Vasudha, you can start your presentation now.
Okay, sir. Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Vasudha, and I'll be presenting a very basic but important topic of anatomy, which is the gross anatomy of temporal bone. I'll be discussing the temporal bone as the parts, surfaces, fissures, and the various landmarks in detail as we'll proceed. Temporal bone. It's a paired symmetrical bone which is present in the human skull as well as in the skull base. It is seen articulating with various other structures of the calvarium, like the parietal bone superiorly, anteriorly the greater wing of the sphenoid bone, and the zygomatic bone through the zygomatic process of the squamous temporal bone, and posteriorly through the mastoid, it is articulating with the occipital bone and also with the petrous part, articulating with the occipital bone of the human skull. And also it is forming a part of the floor of the middle cranial fossa as well as the posterior cranial fossa. It's a very complex anatomical structure which houses the audiovestibular system of the body, and it transmits various nervous, vascular as well as muscular elements through various cavities, hollows, which we'll be studying as per the structures, the surfaces in the coming slides. The parts of temporal bone, as we all know, are four. The squamous part, which is having two parts, the vertical as well as the horizontal part. The projection from the inferior and the posterior part of the temporal bone, the mastoid process. Then the third part, which is the gutter-shaped bone, the tympanic bone or the tympanic part, and a pyramidal shaped bone, which is mainly contributing to the apex or the endocranial surfaces of the skull base, the petrous part of the temporal bone. The auditory system, which is present in the temporal bone, can be divided as per two axes, the anterior posterior axis as well as the lateromedial sensorial axis. The anterior posterior axis includes anteriorly the eustachian tube, in the middle the tympanic cavity or the middle ear, and posteriorly the mastoid. And the mediolateral sensorial axis includes the external auditory canal, the middle ear, and the internal auditory canal. So these auditory axes, they both intersect each other at the level of the middle ear. We studied the parts in detail now. The squamous bone, the first part. This is having two parts divided, like the lateral part or the vertical part, which is contributing major to the lateral surface of the temporal bone, and a horizontal part, which is on the endocranial side or forming the tegment part. These two parts, they are important as the vertical part, it houses the temporal lobe of the brain. And sometimes the groove on the lateral surface for the middle temporal artery is also visualized as its outer structure. And at the junction of these two parts, the horizontal and the vertical, we can see a projection or a process, which is called as the zygomatic process. This zygomatic process has a very important fossa or a pit, which is called as the glenoid fossa, for articulation with the head of the mandible. And in front and behind this glenoid fossa are small tubercles for attachment of the capsule of the temporomandibular joint. This zygomatic process further extends anteriorly, fans out, and articulates with the zygomatic bone. And this zygomatic process, when traced posteriorly, gives a very important landmark, that is the linea temporalis or the supramastoid crest, which is a very important landmark as it demarcates the middle cranial fossa dura, and also it gives insertion to the temporalis muscle, which will be present on this vertical part of the squamous bone. So for every mastoid surgery, we should keep a level at the linea temporalis so as to prevent any dural breach. The squamous bone also articulates inferiorly with the tympanic bone, just beneath or behind the root of the zygomatic process. And there lies a suture, which is called as the tympanosquamous suture, between the squamous and the tympanic part. And it also contributes to the formation of the superior walls of the bony external auditory canal. So the anterior superior and the posterior superior part is contributed by the squamous part of the temporal bone. And the posterior superior edge of the posterior wall of the squamous temporal bone, it gives a projection which is called as the spine of Henle, a very important landmark for any mastoid surgery, and it corresponds medially to the attic. So this was the lateral surface. The medial surface you can see of the vertical part. It also has a groove for the middle meningeal artery, and this is the horizontal part, which is responsible for forming the tegment tympani when it is fusing with the petrous part of the temporal bone. Now the second part, the tympanic bone, a gutter-shaped small bone, which is mainly contributing to the formation of the walls, the bony walls of the external auditory canal, the inferior wall, and majority of the anterior and the posterior wall of the external auditory canal, bony external auditory canal. It articulates, as I said in the last slide, with the squamous part to form a tympanosquamous suture line, and which is the marked one structure is the tympanosquamous suture line, and it also articulates posteriorly with the mastoid process, forming the tympanomastoid suture line, which transmits the auricular branch of the vagus nerve. The tympanic bone, sometimes its inferior part gives a projection or a process inferiorly, which is called as the vaginal process. Not seen in all the temporal bone. Now the mastoid process. This is the mastoid process. As I said, it's a projection of the temporal bone from the posterior and the inferior, border of the temporal bone in an anterior medial direction. And the projection depends on the pneumatization of the mastoid bones. In the inferior surface of the temporal bone, we can see this is the mastoid process. It gives attachment to the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And just in front of it, a very important ridge, the digastric ridge, which is seen, gives origin to the posterior belly of digastric, which is an important landmark for the parotid surgeries. As with the help of this, we can demarcate the stylomastoid foramen, which lies just anteriorly to it. And it is that foramen from which the facial nerve trunk exits the temporal bone. And more anteriorly will be lying the jugular foramen, which I'll discuss in the surfaces when I'll discuss the inferior surface. So this is all about the mastoid process. Now the petrous bone. Petrous bone is the hardest or the strongest bone of the human skull. It is a pyramid-shaped bone which is present in an anterior medial direction, around making an angle of approximately 45 degrees with a transverse axis, and it is angulated between the two bones, that is the greater wing of the sphenoid anteriorly and posteriorly the basic occiput. And it is having surfaces like the anterior superior surface, the posterior superior surface, and an inferior surface. It has a very important role because it has a lot of cavities and important structures like the internal auditory canal transporting various nerves and vessels. The part of the inner ear as well as a majority of the middle ear is also present in the petrous part of the temporal bone. We can see this petrous, again the petrous bone. This is the superior surface, the anterior superior surface of the petrous temporal bone. And this is the posterior superior surface of the petrous temporal bone, showing the internal auditory canal, part of the endolymphatic sac fossa. And this is the sigmoid sinus sulcus, which we will study in detail in the coming slides. Now let's discuss the surfaces of the temporal bones. There are four surfaces of the temporal bone. The lateral surface, which is shown in this picture, contributed by the squamous part of the temporal bone, a part of the cartilaginous, cartilaginous external auditory canal, and a part of the tympanic bone in the bony part and the mastoid process. Superiorly, it is contributed by the anterior superior surface of the petrous part, as well as the horizontal part of the squamous temporal bone. And the posterior contribution in the posterior surface is solely by the petrous bone, that is the posterior superior surface of the petrous temporal bone. And inferiorly, there are a lot of structures like mastoid process, then the various neurovascular structures are seen in the inferior surface, as well as we'll study in detail the carotid canals and the jugular foramen and all, along with the stylomastoid foramen in the inferior surface. So let's start with the lateral surface of the temporal bone. This is a picture showing lateral surface, which is formed mainly by the vertical part of the squamous temporal bone and a part of the zygomatic process, along with the mastoid process. And we have studied the important landmarks, that is the linea temporalis and the spine of Henle. And behind the spine of Henle, a very well-known triangle, which is the McEwan's triangle, corresponding to the mastoid antrum, which is demarcated superiorly by the linea temporalis, and the anterior boundary is by the posterior limit of the external auditory canal. And the tangent between these two, these form the McEwan's triangle, a very important structure to access the mastoid antrum in any mastoid surgeries. And the other landmarks on the lateral surface can be the suture lines anterior superiorly in the bony part of the canal, can be the tympanosquamous suture line, and in the posterior inferior part of the bony canal with the mastoid part, there will be tympanomastoid suture line transmitting the Arnold's nerve. And the tympanomandibular joint in the glenoid fossa, we can see in the anterior relation to the lateral surface of the temporal bone. Okay, next is the superior surface. Superior surface of the temporal bone is formed mainly by the petrous bone, anterior superior surface of the petrous bone, as well as the horizontal part of the squamous temporal bone. A lot of structures, important structures are seen, which we'll study. From the lateral part, we can start the tegment tympani. And from the tegment tympani, then further medially lies the arcuate eminence, which is the projection of the superior semicircular canal. And along the anterior border, a very important hiatus, a facial hiatus, and a groove for the greater petrosal nerve is seen. And furthermore, medially is the petrous apex. So we can say it is demarcated from the anterior boundary by the greater spring of sphenoid. Posteriorly, it is limited by the superior petrosal sinus sulcus, and laterally by the vertical and the horizontal part of the squamous temporal bone, and medially the petrous apex. The facial hiatus or the groove for the greater petrosal nerve is very important, as one can see the greater petrosal nerve running posteriorly into the geniculate ganglion, covered by a bone of but a thin shell of bone, mainly by the petrous, along with the squamous temporal bone, which is around 2.5 mm thickness. And for any middle cranial fossa approaches, it can be easily damaged because of the thin bone over it. And it's in around 10% of the cases, in this geniculate ganglion area, the bony covering of the geniculate ganglion area is found dehiscent. So for any middle cranial fossa approaches, one has to be careful near the anterior border of the petrous, the anterior superior surface of the petrous bone, not to injure the greater petrosal nerve. And along with the greater petrosal nerve, we can also access or see the lesser petrosal nerve traveling across this fissure or the suture line, which you can see between the squamous and the petrous bone. This is the petrosquamous suture line. So another picture of the left temporal bone showing the anterior superior surface of the petrous bone. And this is the suture line. And this is the tegment tympani, contributed by both the petrous majorly and less by the squamous. And this is the anterior facial hiatus. This is the facial hiatus and the groove which transmits the greater petrosal nerve. And this is the projection which is more common, which is more near to the posterior edge or the superior sigma or the greater petrosal sinus, near the greater petrosal sinus. And these two act as a very important landmark for the internal auditory canal as well, because it is said that if we draw a tangent across the long axis of the arcuate eminence and along the facial hiatus, and then the intersection, if an intersection is made and it is traced inferiorly along around 4 to 8 mm, then it can direct us to the internal auditory canal. So this can also be used as a landmark for any surgeries of the internal auditory canal of the meatus, especially the vestibular schwannoma surgery, or any middle cranial fossa approaches surgeries. Okay, lastly, the most middle part was the petrous apex, and this petrous apex, from here the carotid artery, the internal carotid artery exits and travels across the anterior foramen lacerum and then ascends superiorly towards the cavernous sinus. And just anterior to this petrous apex also lies a bony eustachian tube, and parallelly running along with the bony eustachian tube lies the tensor tympani canal, bony canal. So as I said, the surgical importance of this geniculate ganglion or the GSPN hiatus is that the covering of the geniculate ganglion is very thin, around 2.5 mm, and which is sometimes dehiscent in many cases, 15 to 20% cases. So there can be a risk of injury. So one has to be very careful while elevating the dura on the in a middle canal fossa approach, not to injure the geniculate ganglion. The petrous apex, as I told, it is having the important structures like the internal carotid artery foramen, and also it lies near to the Meckel's cave and the skull base, and anteriorly the bony covering or the bony tensor tympani canal and the eustachian tube canal running parallel along with it. Now let's discuss the posterior surface of the temporal bone. Posterior surface is solely formed by the petrous bone, and it is limited from medial to lateral by the petrous bone. The important structures, that is the internal artery canal, the endolymphatic sac fossa area, and the sigmoid sinus sulcus. And sometimes internal opening of the emissary vein is also seen. So the main important structure in this is the internal artery canal on the posterior surface, which is roughly midway between the anterior border of the sigmoid sulcus to the petrous apex. And it has very important role because it transmits a lot of nerves and vessels, which we all know. If we see the cross section, there are by the transverse crest and the Bill's-Maher, we know that it anterior superiorly the facial nerve crosses, the anterior inferiorly the cochlear nerve, posterior superiorly superior vestibular, and the superior inferior vestibular posterior inferiorly. Along with them, the vascular supply is also transmitted. Any surgery in the internal artery canal, especially the vestibular schwannoma surgery, they have risk of injuring the surrounding structures, that is the endolymphatic sac area and the jugular bulb area, which is just near to it. Approximately, it is 1 centimeter ahead of the endolymphatic sac fossa, and it is around 0.5 centimeter superior to the jugular foramen. So, for the intrameatal access or intrameatal drilling of the internal artery canal for the meatal portion of the schwannoma, one can drill less than 0.5 mm, taking care of these two structures, as endolymphatic sac fossa is also having medial relation to the posterior semicircular canal. So one has to be within the 0.5 centimeter limits, not to injure these two structures. And we know the petrous apex anterior-medially directed. Surgical implication, as I told, we can access with the help of the structures present on the superior surface, that is the arcuate eminence and the GSPN hiatus or the facial hiatus, a tangent which is drawn and traced inferiorly. These are mainly for if we are doing a retrosigmoid approach and for hearing preservation, we are going to go behind on the posterior superior surface, and thus we have to be careful about the high riding jugular bulb as well as the endolymphatic sac fossa area injuries. Now the inferior surface. Inferior surface has important structures like the mastoid process, which we have discussed, the digastric notch for the posterior belly of digastric origin, and anterior to it lies the stylomastoid foramen. The stylomastoid foramen transmitting the trunk of the facial nerve, and more anteriorly lies the styloid process, and anterior medially lies the most important foramen of the skull base, jugular foramen. Let's discuss in detail in the coming slides. Jugular foramen, it is formed by two major bones of the skull base, the petrous bone, the anterior lateral part of the petrous bone, which we can see in this diagram, and the posterior medial part is formed by the occipital bone. These two bones, they contribute to the formation of the jugular foramen. And this jugular foramen is also separated from the carotid canal, which lies anterior to it by a jugulocarotidal spine, which we all know. And it has relation to other structures as well. Like in this picture, if you see, this is the jugular foramen area, which is not articulated with the occipital bone. So we can imagine this is the part of the petrous contributing to the jugular foramen. So it has a groove posteriorly for the Arnold's nerve, and the medial surface is related to the cochlear aqueduct and also the inferior petrosal sinus, which will be running. You can imagine roughly like here, the inferior petrosal sinus, and anteriorly the carotid canal or the opening of the internal carotid artery has relations to this jugular foramen. The jugular foramen also has a lateral spine in its lumen, which we can see dividing the lumen into two parts. The lateral part or the posterior lateral part, a larger part, which is the pars vascularis, and the medial part, a small anterior medial part, the pars nervosa. If we see here, so we can see this is a part of the pars vascularis, and this is a part of the pars nervosa, smaller anterior medial part, which is mainly formed by the ninth nerve with the glossopharyngeal nerve with its Jacobson branch, and the inferior petrosal sinus, which you can see going like this. And the pars vascularis, the larger posterior compartment, it is formed by the vagus, the accessory spinal nerve, and the IJV, along with the posterior meningeal artery also. So lastly, I'll discuss the temporal bone fissures. There are around 4 fissures in the temporal bone. The petrosquamous fissure, tympanomastoid, tympanosquamous, and the petrotympanic. 2 we have already discussed in the previous slides. Let's revise them and learn the 2 more. The petrosquamous fissure, which we know is the endocranial, fissure forming the fusion between the horizontal squamous temporal bone and the petrous bone, and they contribute to the formation of the tegmen tympani and tegmen mastoidale. And if we trace it medially, then it is also continued with the petrotympanic fissure. The petrosquamous fissure, it is usually we say it's an endocranial or internal petrotympanic fissure, but it can also be seen as an external, and it is sometimes visible on the outer surface of the mastoid process. Now the tympanomastoid suture line, which we know in relation to the posterior inferior part of this bony external auditory canal, and it transmits the Arnold's nerve. And then tympanosquamous suture line, which we have studied by when we see the articulation of the squamous part with the tympanic bone in the anterior superior part of the external auditory canal, and it can continue medially to this petrotympanic suture. This is the petrotympanic suture line, and which further continues into the endocranial part or the internal petrosquamous part also. And then lastly, the petrotympanic fissure line, it is in the medial aspect of the tympanic bone, which we can see here in relation to the mandibular fossa, and it has important structures transmitting across it, that is the chorda tympani, the anterior tympanic artery, and the anterior pallial ligaments. So this is all about the basic gross anatomy of the temporal bone. Thank you. These are my references. Hello, sir. Sir, I'll stop sharing the presentation, sir, now.
Note, yeah. I've unmuted all.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So if no questions, we'll end this meeting. Again, we'll meet perhaps next Saturday for our next meeting. That is weekend with the maestro program with a new maestro, and also maybe another seminar on otology. Thank you all. Thanks again. Yeah.